know as trainers that we really can't just put people in classrooms and give them a general curriculum and figure that they're going to know what to do about it. Relationship-based learning works really well. Studies show that in the next 5 years, roughly 25% of our workforce is going to retire. That leaves a big hole. At all levels of the organization, how are we going to get people to develop into filling the shoes of fairly experienced people? Mentoring is a wonderful tool. How many people here do have succession planning going on in their organization? Yay, that's great, a handful. I spoke at a conference a couple years ago about succession planning and asked a group of roughly 100 business leaders, owners, executives, who thinks in here that succession planning is a good idea? 100% hands went up. Who here is engaging in succession planning? Nothing. So you are far ahead of that group. You spend all of your time developing other people. That's what you do just by definition. Who develops you? I'm a great advocate for people getting out there and getting their own mentors. Let me tell you a little story about, okay, nodding heads again. A number of years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, met a very bright young individual who was the assistant manager of a branch bank. I started talking to him in the context of writing my book because his philosophy is, I'm going to set goals for what I want to learn, and I'm just going to get out there and get answers to my questions that will help me learn them. He had identified a mentor. He was working wonderfully. I had to interview him probably 4 times in the course of a couple of years because his role kept changing. Promotion, a little time would go by, check in with him, another promotion. He was using all of his resources, not just one mentor at a time necessarily, but all of his resources to get himself the support, encouragement, guidance that he needed. Well, I just looked at my latest main biz, and darn if he didn't get another promotion. Now he's a senior vice president. His ambition is not to be the highest guy in the bank. His ambition is to be someone that people really want to work for. So that's just kind of a nice thing. I supervised an area years ago that was archaic. They actually were divided up by alphabet, and we're just in love with their part of the alphabet. All hell broke loose when I said, this needs to be the same job. We're just wasting a lot of time here. The only way I could get them to agree to trying the other half of the job with their alphabet partner was to promise them that they could co-mentor each other. Well, I respect this person. I've heard her or him work before. All right, I'll give it a try. Even though that's not what you hired me for. Before you knew it, they were off and running. They did a fabulous job of helping each other, supporting each other, getting each other through the willies about this new work. Sometimes I have clients who want to do the whole gang. Let's just get this whole company through training, and we're off and running, and it's just not a good way to do it. Mentoring systems need to be tailored to the organization. To carte blanche, just say, okay, we're mentoring now, let's train everybody, tends to feel like flavor of the month and tends to not last. So start little, experiment, figure out what your organization needs before you go full bore. Other organizations don't even want to call it mentoring. In fact, I've just started working with one that, let's just not even use that word. Let's not call it training, let's call it planning, let's not call it mentoring, let's call it whatever we want to call it. Just because people have connotations with certain words. So, and it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing, it just means that that leader is thinking about how to instill the program in that organization so it's really going to stick, so that people are going to say, oh, this is a good thing. There's also virtual mentoring. We're so connected electronically these days that you can be mentored by somebody out on the West Coast or in Australia and connect very effectively through various tools. So consider those possibilities. More normally, it's face-to-face within an organization.
The person you're trying to match with a mentor has a strength, so you identify a strength. And then you find ways for them to learn more about, if it's a strength already, why would they want to focus on that? Don't people, my struggle with when I'm trying to hook up somebody with a mentor is they fixate on their own weaknesses and what they want to fix about themselves.
Right.
So they want a mentor who's going to help them fix what's broken about themselves.
Yeah, that can happen too. But yeah, that's a really good point, that people tend to come at mentoring or just learning from a sort of a broken point of view. Here you're taking someone who's essentially strong, they're talented, they want to develop, and you're using those strengths to help them further that development, and focusing on that, as opposed to saying, you are just the worst one in the whole organization in this particular area, you better get some help.
But I think it's a lot more subtle than that.
Hopefully.
I don't know. It's just hard sometimes to get people over the hurdle of
It's
not about, you'll be really successful if you can only do something about that X.
Yeah.
It's hard to get people off that.
Yeah, that means I have a problem. Now, it means that you are so good that we want you to get to this point, and here's how we're going to use your strengths to get you there, and in the meanwhile, you'll learn this thing, this body of things that you need to learn. It's why you're offering them the mentoring. It's not because you're flawed, it's because I see you as having this level of capability. Great question. Okay, question is getting involved with a corrective action process with a client. Do companies introduce mentoring? And your client is introducing coaching anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes coaching and mentoring mean the same thing, so it's semantics there.
Well, I think they're very different because for this company, coaching is strictly coming from the management.
Yeah.
The manager, and mentoring is something outside.
Yeah. And coaching often has that, uh-oh, you're in trouble connotation, which is why I don't use that word. Sometimes mentoring is introduced in those situations. If somebody is coming up from a real deficit place in their performance up to meeting expectations, probably the focus is going to be more on coaching, and there might be some mentoring that's tangential to that process that helps. But to make mentoring the uh-oh, you're in trouble tool, just it ruins it for the people that you're talking about, who may have one area of development that they need to get good at in order to really succeed. They're then going to look at the process and say, oh, okay, this really is a punishment. Contract can be as simple or as complex as you need it to be in order for the process to be concrete for both of the people involved. There are some companies that have very involved contracts. They're forms where you fill in the blanks and you sign things, and it's really laid out step by step. There are other organizations that would much rather have it be a verbal contract. The contract should not only include the timeline, etc., it should also include what happens if this relationship doesn't work out. This doesn't necessarily have to be a match made in heaven, and people shouldn't walk away feeling badly if the mentor and mentee aren't doing real well with each other. Agree right at the beginning that if we hit a wall, or if it's just time to end that piece of learning and move on, here's how we'll handle it. Mentees will be intimidated to give the mentor feedback, and like, oh, you keep talking and talking and talking, and really I learn best by doing. One way the mentor can help with that is to ask for feedback and even build that into each session. Tell me what I'm doing that's working well for you, and what could I do differently? What would be more helpful? It's powerful modeling for that mentee. Measurements should be common metrics, if you can possibly do that. Measurements might be numeric, Measurements might be anecdotal, but the measurements are how the mentee and mentor tell if there's progress being made. How do we know when we're Make reward part of the process. There needs to be something in it for the mentor and mentee. Mentors are working out of the goodness of their heart, so there's probably a lot of reward just in helping someone. The mentee gets to achieve their goals, so that's a reward too. But make them feel special. Do something to celebrate. Help the mentee and mentor celebrate together. Not just at the end of the process, but at every increment where they can apply the measurement and say, wow, that really worked well. Libby?
Susan, what do you think about a direct supervisor being a mentor of one of their direct reports? Is that possible? Pros and cons?
Okay. Question is, what about a direct supervisor being a mentor? Sure. In fact, in my book, that's part of a supervisor's job. But if you're thinking that a supervisor is going to work with a particular person to develop them in a particular way, it needs to be well defined, so it looks like that supervisor is not playing favorites with this person. If there's a difference between my role as a supervisor and my role as a mentor, let that be part of the contract. You know, how does my mentoring you play into performance management?
Right.
You know, is there a line in between? Is there a divide? If they can work that out, great. If not, maybe the supervisor should find somebody else who can help that person. But it's not uncommon for supervisors to be in that mentor role. The fairness piece is really key. Thanks for your enthusiasm, and again, good luck with your programs. If you want a copy of the book, my contact information is on the handout. Get hold of me and I'll get you one. Thanks.